Hey y'all, it's new camera day. I got the Sony A7C II. The rumors, the hype is real, and the Sony A7CR, but I only got the A7C II. Let me give you the skinny on these two cameras, okay? The A7C II is essentially a Sony A7 IV. Literally, they ripped all the guts, features, frame rates, resolutions, like literally everything is the same. Added in the AI chip from the Sony A7R5, ZV-1 and A6700, and a bunch of those features, and slapped it into a new A7C updated body with a price tag of around freaking $2,000, because I don't know the official price because it's not out, but I'll put it right there. There's a super loud semi truck behind me. Now, the Sony A7CR takes the same formula. It's the A7R5's guts. It literally steals everything out of it. The only thing that you don't get is you don't get 8K, but you do gain 16-bit RAW over HDMI. Everything else is the Sony A7R5 sprinkled in with some 6700 AI stuff in the same A7C updated body with a price tag of around $3,000, because again, I don't know the official price, but it is right here. Now, because I didn't get an A7CR, I'm gonna focus on the A7C II, which I did get. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Let's go. Let's bring in the A7C, and I want to spend a little bit of time here because obviously you want to know what the freaking differences are. Okay, so A7C versus A7C II and A7CR. As you can tell, the bodies look really similar. The A7C and the A7CR are also available in the black and silver two-tone finish. However, the rubbery finish from the A7C is no more on the A7C II and the A7CR. This is the typical Sony style kind of, I don't know what to call this, but it ain't the same. Now, there is an available extension handle for the A7C II. It does not come standard, but the A7CR, it does come standard, and it's basically give you more real estate. It's a dummy grip, so it doesn't give you any digital functionality, but that is available. And the other thing that we can see right off the bat is on the front of the A7C II and the A7CR, now there's a front dial where the A7C did not have that. If we flip them over on their side, this side is pretty much, you know, boring and uneventful. If we flip this around to the back, this is where a lot of the changes take place. So they look, again, very similar. You can see right here the menu button is in the middle, where now there's a menu button and a C1 on the A7C II and the A7CR. If you look at the back of the A7C, there's only a menu button. We still have a dial right here on both. We still have a corner dial on both. However, on the A7C, you can see that there are markings for exposure compensation, just like the A7 IV is now blank. Here's another major change is on the A7C, there is no photo video switch. On the A7C II and the A7CR, there's now a photo, video, and S&Q switch, which is huge, and the on and off switch is the same place on both. EVF on the A7C II is way better. Both of these have a 2.36 million dot EVF, but the A7C II and the A7CR now have 120 frames per second refresh. It's really bright, almost as bright as the Sony A7R5, and the magnification has been bumped from 0.59x to 0.70x on the A7C II. Now on this side, you can see the layout is almost the same. You got a single card slot on both, and some of the ports are kind of moved around, but they're the same ports, with exception to the A7C II and the A7CR having a much newer and faster USB-C port that does support power delivery and live streaming. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. And then the last thing, when it comes to the rear displays, they both have freaking French fry grease all over them. There's no more Sony logo at the bottom like there was on the A7C, on the A7C II, and the A7CR, so that's blank. The A7C was 921,000 dots, and it honestly was a really poor screen in my opinion. They at least bumped up the resolution on the rear display of the A7C II and the A7CR, so now it's just over 1 million dots, and it is a whole lot brighter. Overall, the body design is very similar, but obviously there's some upgrades from all of Sony's newer cameras. Now let's go ahead and go back outside. Man, y'all should see how some of these people looking at me because I'm filming downtown. And I don't care what none of these people think. Listen, the A7C II is literally the exact same thing as the Sony A7 IV when it comes to photography. It's the same 33 megapixel sensor. It's the same 15 plus stops of dynamic range. It's the same 15 megapixels in crop mode, but we're not gonna act like that's a bad thing, because the A7 IV for a photography camera, it's one of my favorite ever. It's absolutely butter. The sensor out the A7 IV, the sensor out this camera is fantastic. The images look great. the low light performance, just like the A7 IV, is amazing. It handles more array. I hate freaking saying that word and detailing all of that stuff without an issue. I think that the Sony A7 IV sensor, when it comes to image quality for a mid-tier, mid-megapixel, is one of the best sensors ever made. But there's some things that are a little bit different right now. You still have your uncompressed, I gotta look on the screen because I'm gonna forget. You still get uncompressed, you still get compressed raw, you still get lossless in small, medium, and large. Obviously, you still get HLG still image, you still get heat photos. Now, when you go to JPEGs, however, there's an option for light. So there's light, standard, fine, and extra fine. Also for photography. Although this steals a whole lot from the Sony A7 IV, we got to remember it is still a Sony A7C. So that means just like the A7C, the max shutter speed is a 4,000th of a second when it comes to mechanical. Now, if you switch it over to e-shutter, you can go up to an 8,000th of a second, but then you do potentially introduce rolling shutter. The other thing is it can shoot 10 frames per second in mechanical and 10 frames per second and electronic. I know this test won't matter to most of y'all, but I want y'all to hear what the shutters sound like between the A7C, the A7C II, and the Sony A7 IV. Both the A7C II and the A7CR have focus bracketing up to 299 images, and the A7CR carries over the pixel shift technology from the A7R5. Man, these names are killing me, but although those things are great, I'm really hyped about the accessibility features, just like I was with the 6700. So now you can do things like touch the screen to take a photo, you can touch the screen to start recording, you have your tabs on the side that control like white balance, your focus area, all that good stuff. You still got the main one and main two pages from all of Sony's new cameras, and now you can touch the screen to do stuff like to auto expose and focus lock, focus bracket, all that good stuff is now included. Again, these are not huge changes, but they're welcome changes because they make using the cameras easier. Now we can get into the nitty-gritty on when it comes to video. Let's get it. All right, camera nerds, I got the Sony A7 IV on the table and the new Sony A7C II. Now, the reason I brought the A7 IV is because Sony says that the new A7C II and the A7CR have 7 stops of stabilization versus the Sony A7 IV's 5 and the original A7C's 5. Sony even makes the claim that you can get sharp handheld photos up to 2-second exposures with the A7C II. So let's put both through some vlog style paces and some handheld paces to see, is the A7 II really that much better than the A7 IV? And I'm not gonna put my opinions on the screen. I'm gonna just let y'all choose. Let's go. All right, so the question is, will the A7C II overheat? And I think this is important because the A7 IV does sometimes overheat, okay? And this is as I've stated 40,000 times in this freaking video, the same exact image chain as the A7 IV in a smaller body. So right now I'm on the porch, it's the morning time, reading my scripture, drinking my coffee, and doing an overheat test right now with the A7C II. So right now we're at 40 minutes of 4K 30. It's about 75 degrees outside, but we are sitting in the shade and I have not encountered any type of overheating warning as of yet. But I think these are fairly easy conditions for any camera. So to kick things up a notch, we're gonna go out and sit the camera right in the morning sun. Nah, it's way too bright, hold up. All right, so now it's on the sidewalk in the morning sun. So we'll see if I can get it to overheat. Now, again, this is 4K 30. Of course, if I flip it over to 4K 60, it will overheat a lot faster. But 4K 30 right now, we're gonna see if I can get the overheat. All right, I had to resort to more drastic measures, okay? Because sitting it on the concrete in the sun did not get it to overheat. So we are at now 1 hour and 7 minutes, and I put it on top of my wife's black car, and I am now getting an overheat icon about every 10 seconds. It hasn't shut off yet, and actually it just stopped. But anyways, this is, like I said, an hour and 7 minutes. Now, if you live in Texas or like the freaking desert, I can't test for you. It's only like 75, 80 degrees here in Cleveland. You'll need to go to Gerald's video if you want controlled testing under, you know, various Celsius and Fahrenheits and all that stuff. I'm just saying, for me, under normal circumstances, I'm not filming anything over an hour in broad daylight at 4K 30. And for me, this level of performance will be acceptable, but you know, I can't speak for where you live at. I'm sure you probably can't see that, but we have a consistent overheat warning on the screen now, so it's not flashing anymore. We had an hour, 18 minutes, 33% battery life, so we gotta keep it going. All right, it just shut off. We made it to about an hour and 20 minutes, and this thing is hot. But hour, 20 minutes, 4K 30, broad daylight, I'll take that, to be honest with you. I will take this over downtown Cleveland. I should have came here first, but anyways, let's talk about video, okay? Video on the A7C II is pretty much the same as it is on the A7 IV, minus a few small things that are different. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, because the A7 IV was a great video tool with some compromises, right? But anyways, let's go through the usual suspects. You got your 4K 24, 4K 30. Those are oversampled from 7K. So just like the A7 IV, the video quality is absolutely fire. 4K 60 comes with a 1.5 times crop. I wish it was a little different, but it's not. It's what we got. And of course, you got your 1080p, 120 frames per second. Now, of course, you got your picture profiles and all of them. You got S-Cinetone, you got S-Log3. One of the main differences with the A7C II versus the A7 IV is now you can upload your LUTs to the A7C II. Can't do that on the A7 IV. Still the same dual base ISO of 800 and 2500. So again, everything is pretty much the same as it is with the A7 IV on the A7C II. Now, the A7CR also copies everything from the A7R5, with exception of it cannot do 8K, but it does gain 16-bit RAW over HDMI that the A7R5 cannot do. The A7C II does not have that ability, and it's the same literal dizzying array of codecs that the Sony A7R5 has. Now, both of them obviously give you your H.264, H.265. You know, you could do your intra options, your long GLP options. All of that is there, right? They also add in things like live streaming. So the A7 IV has live streaming, but it only does up to 4K 15. The A7C II does up to 4K 30, and both of them gain the new time-lapse feature that started with the Sony ZV-E1, where it will spit out an actual video file for you. You can do it at S-Log3, and the time-lapse is already freaking made. So when it comes to video, both cameras are not as powerful as something like the Sony FX3, but I mean, just like their bigger brothers, they do good enough for video, and for a hybrid camera, I guess that's really all you could ask for, right? All right, let's test out some roll and shutter, which should be the exact same thing as the Sony A7 IV, because it's the same imaging chain. I have stabilization off. I'm at 16 millimeters at 4K 30, and let's go ahead and make you nauseous. So here we go. You can see some jello already. Now, if we zoom in, this is where it really becomes pronounced. Look at that. Yep, it's still there. It's still there. You ready to get more sick? All right, here we go, here we go, here we go. All right, let's switch to 4K 60, where it's actually a little bit better, but like I said, it's gonna be the same as A7 IV, but I'm gonna show you. Okay, so we are in 4K 60 now, and of course it comes with a 1.5 times crop. We still at 16 millimeters, and let's go ahead. It's not that bad. And like I said, in 60 frames a second, because we are cropping in on the sensor, it is not as bad as 4K 24 and 4K 30 in the A7C II. So again, same thing as the Sony A7 IV, and with the A7R5 A7CR deal, that camera does suffer from some roll and shutter performance also, but this is what we got. I wasn't even gonna spend any time on autofocus, because honestly, the A7C II and A7CR are no different than Sony's other cameras when it comes to autofocus. They are the best in the business, the most reliable in the business, the most robust in the business because this has the new AI chip, just like the A7R5. It does the human pose estimation, so it knows where your freaking head's gonna be when you turn around and go skip it down the street. It can pull your eye out of a motorcycle helmet with a visor on. Like, it's really smart with figuring out where it needs to focus, and the A7C II does a fantastic job also. But for you that want the nerdy stuff, I brought it for you, okay? The A7C had 693 phase detect points, which covered 93% of the sensor. The A7C II has 759 phase detect points, which covers 94% of the sensor, okay? The A7CR has the same 759 phase detect autofocus points, but because it's 61 megapixels, it only covers 79% of the sensor. However, in APS-C mode, it does cover 100% of the sensor, which is the highest out of any Sony camera. So with that being said, there's the nerdy stuff. The autofocus just works, and it works well every single time. Planes, trains, insects, automobiles, spaceships, it tracks all of it. Let's move on. Some of you were wondering on the A7C II while you were doing HDMI info display whether it will keep both screens on, and that answer is no. As you can see right here, I have it plugged up to a Ninja through a cable and blacked out rear display. If we turn it off, however, of course, both of them come on. So there you go. All right, let's talk artificial intelligence, AI, because the A7C II and A7CR have this newfangled AI chip. Now, some of y'all have saw some of this stuff already, but the A7C II has auto framing, so I'm actually using it right now. It's like your own personal freaking camera, man. It zooms in, zooms out. It's smart enough to stop down to get more people in the frame if more people come into the frame, and then if they leave, it focuses back on me. So these are the types of things that the AI does, in addition to the autofocus stuff that we kind of saw earlier, where it does like the human pose estimation and allows you to track planes, trains, automobiles, aliens, all that good stuff. Plus the AI chip aids in things like auto white balance, is really good at it, aids in things like auto exposure, which is great at. Plus it does stuff like takes facial recognition to the next level. So not only can you do it for photos, but you can do it for freaking video too. So let's just say you're shooting a wedding or something like that, and you want the bride to be the focal point for this particular section of the wedding. Well, you can just tap her face and it'll focus on her and only for her. So it'll ignore everybody else, even if she leaves the frame. And as soon as she comes back, it'll pick her right up. And then if you wanted to go follow the groom around and his name is Jeffrey for some whatever reason, then you can press Jeffrey's face and it'll do the same thing. So anyways, the AI stuff in the A7C Mark II and the A7CR, some of y'all might think it's gimmicky. I actually think that what the AI chip brings to these newer cameras is fire, because I use this stuff like auto frame and I use it all the time. I use the autofocus, I use, you know, auto white balance and all that other good stuff. So the AI chip really helps these cameras out, and I'm glad to see it trickle down to all these new Sony cameras. All right, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Two side notes real quick. I love how these new Sony cameras, like your boy got on shades right now and it's still like just picking my eye. Like I don't even have these glasses on. The other thing is I've been using this A7C II all day, photos, video, slow-mo, and I still got 1 notch left on the battery. So the battery life on the A7C II is solid. Listen, man, in my opinion, another 2 good offerings from Sony. Are these cameras perfect? No, but what camera is? Personally, I'm not mad at Sony dropping all these cameras. I know some of y'all don't like it, but me, I think it's great, man. There's an option for everybody at every price point. The A7C, my shoulder hurt. The A7C needed to be upgraded bad, and it got a proper upgrade with the A7C II. The A7R5 didn't necessarily need to be updated, but a lot of people wanted access to those features at a cheaper price point in a smaller body, and boom, that's what they got. So whether or not the cameras are for you, that's not what I'm debating. I'm debating that these cameras are for somebody, because Sony did not make them for no reason, and they don't miss when it comes to dropping cameras. So hey, their marketing teams and all that stuff know way better than we do. Overall, I think these are 2 more solid offerings for Sony's lineup. I love to see all of the new tech filtering down to all of the new cameras. All of these new cameras need to be up to date when it comes to the new autofocus and AI and all that stuff. And hey, this is the advancement of technology. This is how it goes. You don't like it, get out of technology. So let me know what y'all think about the A7C II and the A7CR down in the comments. Are you copying one or not? Until the next time, I'm out of here. So peace and chicken grease, much love, y'all. Tyson Terry Warfare. I'm out. Peace.